There are some more Chumashim coming, so there'll be time to, everyone will have one today. Today we're going to do the Chumash again, go back to that. We'd like to welcome Dr. Barnhart, welcome, and your son Yoni, who's been watching us on the TV, but he's in live, he came for the live show tonight. So thank you, and thank you for your support of this project. It was really very special. And welcome back to Marcia, who is vertical and visible. Welcome back, we're so glad. Right, welcome back to Rabbi Gelman.
Yes.
He's back. And he had a good night's sleep. We're in trouble.
You misquoted me last week.
I did not misquote you.
If you quoted me, it was a misquote.
Did I quote it? I don't think I quoted. Did I quote him last week? We said worshipful things about you last week.
Yeah, likely stuff.
It's true, you know. David, this is David, and David Katz is the director of Hillel 818. And this week they got some very, very good news. A very large donor is going to support the rebuilding of the Hillel House at Cal State Northridge and the endowment of the program. So Mazal Tov to you. It's a wonderful thing, really wonderful thing. And for those of you who know him, Scott Howard, who's our president of the shul, got his liver transplant a week ago and is doing he got a liver transplant, right. And he's doing remarkably well. And he should be coming home this week. The UCLA hospital is going to release him Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They'll say they have to keep an eye on him, but he's doing so great. He looks terrific, and we're very happy. So, Scott, if you're watching, Mazel Tov. I look forward. Sorry? Mr. Kosher's, yeah, it's my next-door neighbor's brother-in-law. But he had one a long time ago, but he's had complications, is what he's had, yeah. Scotty, thank God, he's doing okay. Yeah, so anyway, there's a big thing on the radio this morning about organ transplants. Now they tell you, you know. Yeah, it's very scary. Yeah, and that's what our experience was. They told him that he could get it quicker if he moved someplace else, but it wouldn't be as good for him, so he stayed here. So, yeah? Yeah. 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 Well, he told me that before they started the surgery, they showed it to him. They showed him the organ. He said it was on a large dinner plate with onions, you know. No. That was horrible. That was horrible. Sorry, that was horrible. That was horrible. There's no unkosher liver. This is all life-saving. The truth of the matter is it's life-saving, but as all of us have a sense about this, there's something rather primitive about this, right? I mean, eventually there'll be artificial surrogates for all of these organs, but to have to wait for somebody to get rid of their, to lose their liver, to lose their life in order to transplant the liver is kind of a crazy system. So I'm not going there. There's so many things that I could say, but I'm not going to. Don't start me. I mean, it's Shabbos. I'm in shul. I got a yarmulke on. Don't even start me. It's okay. This week, all right. Following today's learning, I'm glad you're all here. Following today's learning, there's a library minion upstairs, Tat Shabbat in the other room, and a regular main service in the Sher Lapati. Today, the main service, there's no bar mitzvah. During Musaf, during the second half of the service, we're going to premiere a new piece of music by Ethan Braun. Ethan's a young man who grew up in our congregation, a very, very talented, accomplished musician who studied composition in Europe and is now finishing his PhD in music at Yale. And he's a wonderful composer. And he composes very interesting reflections on life. And he's composed a reflection. We have some more Chumashim here, so you want to just grab some. He's composed a very interesting reflection on the experience of being in a minyan, and it's a very, very interesting piece. So if you want to come hear that, we're going to be davening as soon as we finish here. About 11:15, 11:30, we'll present that piece, okay? And very, very interesting music, and we're delighted. This is the premiere of the piece. It's the first time he's ever performed the piece. So please come and join us for that. This week, good morning. Yeah, this Parsha discussion, this lunch and learn this week. Next Shabbos morning, we will be joined by an old friend, dear friend of mine, Reverend Dr. Derek Austin, is a minister in the United Church of Christ, which is sort of the Christian Protestant equivalent of conservative Judaism. And he and I will have a conversation about how Jews and Christians read the Bible together. He's a wonderful, wonderful teacher of Christianity. And then next Sunday night is the gala for the synagogue, and we're honoring Malka Showeiss. Malka, who's become a wonderful voice for our community, and has always been a wonderful teacher for our community. We'll be honoring her next week, as well as recognizing Sheva Lach's 16 years of leadership in the day school. So if you'd like to come, we'd love to have people come and join us for that tribute to Malka. Okay, I think that's all. And then next Sunday is also the Israel Festival downtown at Rancho Park. So everyone's invited to come for that as well. All right, we have lots of chumashim here, so if you need one, just raise your hand and we'll pass them around. We'll just put them, yeah, there's some, Ronnie, there's some behind you there, so pass them this way. And there's a few here, right? Okay, we good? Everybody got one? You'll need one today, because today we're going to do Bible again. Okay. Okay, good morning. Today we are at the heart of the Torah. So please open to page 693. This is the heart of the Torah. You can see from just the book that you're right in the middle. You're right in the middle of Leviticus, which means you're right in the middle of the Torah. And this time of year, we just passed the midpoint of the Omer. So we're right, morning, Chef. We're right in the middle of the Jewish year. The book of Leviticus is divided into two sections. The first half of the book of Leviticus, up through chapter 18, is a rule book for the priesthood. How they're to conduct worship, how they are to lead the community. Starting with chapter 19, the focus of the book of Leviticus turns from the priesthood to the populace. This is the priestly message to the populace of Israel. This is the priestly message to the people Israel. This is the Torah of the priests for the community. And it begins with a flourish. This is the sort of bum, 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 bum of this section of the Torah. The section of the Torah, section of the book of Leviticus is called the Holiness Code, because it begins with the word Kedoshim. And here is the flourish. Here is the opening sort of salvo of this section. V'yadeber Adonai el Moshe. More God said to Moses, Daber el kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Speak to the whole people of Israel. V'amarta alehem, and tell them, Kedoshim tihiyu, ki kadosh ani Adonai Elohechem. You will be Kedoshim. You will be kadosh. Don't translate yet. Because I, God, am kadosh. There's music in the air. More. Someone's trying to get hold of you, babe. It's your bookie. He's decided you should make a large contribution to the VBS building fund. Yeah. The Dodgers won and we're... Okay. Just throw it against the wall as hard as you can. It tends to make him quiet real quick. Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani. Now, there's so many questions to ask about that sentence, right? The first kind of thing is, you are to be X because I, God, am X. Well, how can we be what God is? If God is totally other, if God is separate from experience, beyond comprehension, how can we be what God is? That's one question. Here's a second question. What's kadosh? What does this word kadosh mean? Now, we translate it here as holy. And if I'd say, good, now translate holy, you'd say sacred. And I'd say translate sacred, and you'd say holy, and we're back where we started again. You'd say, well, maybe it means something of infinite value. But then what does it mean to say you will be of infinite value because I got of infinite value? You will be worshipped? What does it mean? It's a word, really, when you think for a moment, that doesn't have a great deal of content. It doesn't have a content. Then if you look at the sentence again, what do you mean, Kedoshim tihiyu? You will be holy. Is that a command? You will achieve a status of holy. If you're not already holy, how can you be holy? How can you become holy? Are things created, born, arrived, or originated in holiness? Or is holiness a status that you achieve through some set of behaviors or some set of actions? What does it mean to become holy? Shabbat is holy because it's holy, right? The sanctuary is holy because it's holy. You can be like a sanctuary in Shabbat. What does that mean? I'm going to suggest to you that it's a very ambiguous phrase. It's quoted all the time. You see it on the front of synagogues all over the damn place. But it's a very strange sentence. So I want to spend today figuring out what that sentence means. And we're going to take a look through the Torah, take a look at some sections here, and I'm going to suggest a theory. And when I suggest the theory, this is a Gelman move. I'm going to tell you what all of Judaism means by understanding this line. Because I think this is really the heart of the Torah. This is the priestly vision of what we can be, what we are to be as a people. So let's go and look at another section. Go back with me. You can leave this page now. Come back with me to page 3. All the way at the beginning. Now, why this section? Because according to the Bible scholars, the first chapter of Genesis was written by the priests. This is what's called the P source. In other words, the guys who taught Kedoshim Tihiyu understood that you knew this narrative of Genesis. This is the narrative context in which Kedoshim Tihiyu is taught. Let's take a look at this narrative, because I think there is a sort of underlying, not secret, but underlying hidden message in the first chapter of Genesis, right? Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, or when God began creating, everything was a mess. Vaya aretz tohu vavohu. Everything was a mess. Tohu vavohu, mishmash. V'choshech al pnei tehom, beruach Elohim merachefet al pnei hamayim. And there was darkness, and there was God hovering over the water. And here's the line that's important. Vayomer Elohim. God says, Yehi or. Vayehi or. God, now, we use the language, let there be light. In Hebrew, it's Yehi or, 2 words. And Yehi is an interesting word because there's no consonants here. You hear it? It's Yud, Hey, Yud. Yehi. It's a breath. God breathes light, reality, into the world. The only consonant is the resh at the end, which is a soft consonant. Yehi or. Let there be has too many consonants in it. It's more like be light. God breathes reality into the universe. Now notice what's missing. Any kind of material or any kind of process. There's no material. God's not making light out of something. There's no material there, and there's no fundamental process. It's just God says, be light, and there's light. There is what's being suggested here, I believe, is a fundamental unity, a connection between the Creator and the creation. It's more like the creation is an extension of the Creator. He's breathing it into the world. He's breathing creation into the world. So that creation and Creator are somehow of the same, somehow the same. They're somehow born of the same thing, right? And it goes on like that until you get to the end of the story, which you'll find on the 6th day, right? Page 9. Page 9. Verse number 26. And God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness. So when you get to the last act of creation, everything gets created and man is brought in at the very end of the creation story. Man is brought in at the very end of the creation story. And unlike all the other things, there is a moment of premeditation. God doesn't say, let us create a world. He just says, let there be light. Let there be land. Let there be life. Let there be a world, a cosmos. But now when it comes to the creation of man, it's let us create man. There's a moment of premeditation. There's a moment of thinking about it, right? And what is the one thing it tells you about the creation of the human being? In our image, after our likeness. Bitsalmenu kidmutenu. In other words, the human being and the divine are to share something important. It's not that God is wholly other. In fact, it's the opposite of that. You are made in the image of God. You reflect the divine and the demut of God. Tselem and demut are the two words, image and likeness. Tselem and demut, meaning there's something of the divine that you and I reflect as human beings. There is a fundamental oneness between the divine, between the Creator and the human being. Here is the one creature in the world that reflects the Creator. And then it gives you a little bit of a hint. Let them rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all the creeping things. Sure, because you're God's reflection in the world, you get to play God to everything else in the world. You get to rule the world. And God created man. Here's the third one. Listen carefully. And God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Man and woman, created in the same gesture. So there is a fundamental unity between man and woman. For all of the differences between Mars and Venus, here you have a notion in which we are created in the same creative gesture, together at the same moment, in the image of God. There's a oneness between us. And notice, no material and no process. It just said he created them. It doesn't say how. So there is a fundamental unity now. The theme of Genesis 1 is oneness. Unity. Unity between Creator and creation. Unity between Creator and the human. Unity between man and woman in this creation. Now, when we turn to the next chapter, which is the JE source, which is the folk tradition, this is a much more vivid, folksy way of telling the story, but it repeats the same ideas. It repeats the same ideas, but in a more folksy way. It starts out by saying, you're on page 13, when Lord God made heaven and earth, when there was no shrub of the field and no grass of the field. Very vivid, very folksy, right? I'll be right with you. There's nothing in the world. It's empty. It's desert. It's wilderness. God needs water and he needs people. So the Lord God, right, made a flow of water comes up from the ground. And look at verse 7. The Lord God formed the man from the dust of the earth. In this story, there's material. And the material is the schmutz of the earth. So if ever you look at the earth as an other, you're wrong. You and the earth are made out of the same stuff. You are walking dirt. Nothing personal. Your name is Adam, and the earth is Adama. You are of the earth, and the earth is of you. You are walking earth. The only difference between you and all the other schmutz in the world is this. He blew into his nostrils nishmat chayim, the breath of life. God does a little artificial respiration. Because respiration is related to inspiration. Right? You respire because you inspire. You put spirit into something. You put life into something. Spiritus. You have spiritus in you, right? You die, your library books are overdue. It's called expiration, right? Okay? Spirit. Ruach means spirit and wind. God breathes in. Every time you breathe, you're breathing in God. You're repeating the godly act. So there too, life, the life inside of you is the souvenir of God's creation of you. You are once again one. So there is oneness between the Creator and the creation. There is oneness between God and man. There's oneness between man and woman. There's oneness between human beings and nature. This story, by the way, has a different interpretation of the creation of woman. You know that, right? God plants the Garden in Eden, sticks the man in there, tells him he has paradise, hands him the remote control, shows him where the beer refrigerator is, and says, okay, NFL all day long. Turns out, man's not happy. Don't know why, but he's not happy. It beats God, too. He says, I gave you everything you wanted, right? So what happens? Turns out, man's not happy. Lord said, page 16, not good for man to be alone. Not good for man to be alone. I'll make a fitting helper. The God in the JE source, which is the second chapter of Genesis, is a little clueless. I mean, God in chapter 1 knows everything. God in chapter 2 is clueless. So he's going to try to, so what does he do? He puts the man there and he says, I'll bring you animals. And one by one, he brings all the animals and says, is this what you're looking for? Brings him a cocker spaniel. Bah, 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 bah. Oh, cute, cute, cute. He's adorable. Not what I want. Brings him a pussy cat. Brings him a goat, a sheep, a snake, a cow, a shark, a porpoise. What man isn't complete with a porpoise? My God. Every person should live with porpoise, right? And then he realized none of these creatures are enough. So he has to do something radical, a little surgery. Verse 21, so the Lord God cast a deep sleep upon the man. Now, if you have some fun with this, you ask, why is falling in love like falling asleep? Right? But let's not go there, because one day you wake up and go, what was I thinking? It's like, right? While he slept, he took one of his ribs. The Hebrew is mitzlotav, right? It's selah. That can be rib. It can also mean his side. I like side better. Like chops the guy in half, right? No, because ribs, you could do arthroscopically. So why surgery? And the Lord God fashioned this rib he'd taken from the man into a woman. She is of him. And he wakes up, and the first words that man speaks in the whole world is a poem of love. I think that's kind of sweet, by the way. The first words articulated by a human being in the Bible, he looks at her, and then he looks at God and said, Zotapam, which means, this time, God, you got it right. I like the Cocker Spaniel. And the pussycat's sweet, right? And the alligator, adorable. But this one's different. Why? Because etzem mi atzmai ubasar mi psari. She is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Oneness between man and woman. To me, the deep hidden theme of Genesis 1 is this theme of oneness. This was meant to be a world of oneness. Oneness between God and nature, God and creation. Oneness between God and human beings. Oneness between human beings and nature. And oneness between men and women. Among human beings. This was the great image of the Garden of Eden. Think about a garden. Think about it. A garden is the most interesting thing. I thought about this a lot. Why didn't God put him into a city? Or a palace? Why did he build him a palace? A shopping mall, right? And the Lord God created a mall in Minnesota, and he put the man there, and he gave him a credit card and said, go shop, just don't shop in that shop, that's my shop. I mean, you can imagine that story, but that's not what it is. Why a garden? A garden is the most interesting thing, because a garden is both natural and artificial. Right? It is a place where artifice and nature meet each other, and the one characteristic of a garden is that everything is symbiotic with everything else. Everything helps everything else grow. If you do a garden right, it grows together. It's a symbol of oneness. Of oneness, right? It's a symbol of oneness. This is the image of the world that God intended. That's the narrative background, Kedoshim Tihiyu. Okay, take a moment. Let's get a bunch of questions. Then I'll show you how it plays out. Wait, we haven't got there yet. Yes?
Okay, my question is, maybe it's not an okay question.
Well, there's never not an okay question.
I wonder if
When have I ever
human being is made in the image of God, how come we still have vicious people, bad people? Is it only Jewish people?
Yeah, only Jewish people are bad, you mean?
No, Jewish people that are an image of God, no, they're not.
No, it doesn't say that.
Everybody should be.
Yeah, because that's the next story. The next story, it's the very next story, right? Because you have something which no creature has. You have freedom. You have free will. You can make a choice, right? You can make a choice. God's not going to stop you from making good choices or bad choices. God will tell you what the choices ought to be, but you get to make choices, right? So we have the first story of the first two brothers right here in Genesis, right? The very first two brothers born in the world. And what happens to them? They have a fight. Anyone here raise children? Your children ever fight? No, never. You ever put two kids in the back seat of a car and try to drive around the block? He's on my side! Right?
So what do you mean? mean by image of God?
Well, that's the question. I don't know. But here's the question. I think that what Genesis is trying to point to, let me stop a second. The question of what we mean by image of God is one of the great questions of all of Jewish thinking. What's godly about us? That's one of the great questions, and you have different answers according to each thinker who's ever answered the question. Maimonides had an answer. Abraham Heschel had an answer. I just destroyed the microphone as an answer. Right? We have different answers depending on which philosopher you read. Okay? But the important thing here isn't what the important thing to me today is not the answer to that question, with due respect. The important thing is whatever it means that us and God, we and God, we are made out of the same stuff. We come together. We are unified. There is a oneness between God and God's creation, the human being. That, to me, is the interesting fact today. Just for today. Tomorrow, I'll answer the question differently. But today, that's what's interesting, okay? Abraham Heschel thought it was about caring. Moses Maimonides thought it was about thinking. Okay, other people think Rabbi Schulweis thought it was conscience. Every different thinker has different ideas about how to answer that question. Okay, but what's important to me is this crazy, interesting, remarkable idea that human beings and God, hey, Kemi, human beings and God are fundamentally unified. We are one. We have a fundamental unity. Okay? That to me, just for today, that's what I want to talk about. Okay?
My other question is,
Yeah.
there were dinosaurs in the world before dogs and cats and all this stuff.
Right.
At that time there wasn't any God, or God didn't create those?
Dinosaurs?
Yeah.
And God created the Brontosaurus in his image.
Yes.
No.
It should be that way.
Yes. All right. First of all, dinosaurs were not discovered until the middle of the 19th century. No one knew anything about it. Archaeologists, not even archaeologists, explorers found these giant bones. And they didn't know what they were. The whole idea of dinosaurs really is a 19th century idea. Okay? Imagine this. You find bones, and you realize that there's no animal in the world that these bones belong to.
But since they haven't not existed.
Wait, hang on. Calm down. I'm going to answer your question. Don't get excited. Look this up. It's very interesting. The whole history of paleontology, right? Usually we do paleontology of history, but today's history of paleontology. Paleontology is a science of old things, right? And the idea that there were animals that lived on this planet before we got here and that don't exist anymore was an idea that somebody had to come up with. But they had these bones and they didn't know what they were. And when they started fiddling with these bones and putting them together, this idea began to form. That there were animals who inhabited this world before we got here that don't exist anymore. They went extinct. And that there were ages of these animals. This idea of geological ages and biological ages, this is a 19th century idea. Began in the 18th century and was developed in the 19th century. The writers of the Bible didn't know that. They didn't know about dinosaurs. No one knew anything about dinosaurs. So they didn't put them into the Bible. But that's not the point of the story. To me, the point of the story isn't to tell you something that science is going to tell you. Science tells you how God creates stuff. The point of the story, to me, tells you something much more interesting, which is that deep within human reality, deep within our reality, we have the capacity to live at one. To live at one with each other, to live at one with nature, right? To live at one with God. This is the great story of Genesis, oneness. Now, you look at the world today, it's a real crazy dream, living at one, right? I mean, just listen to the news in the morning about the crazy things that happen in the world and see how far we are from a world in which we live at one. How far we are from a world we live at one. I don't know about you, but I locked the door on my way out this morning. because I don't feel at one with the people who live in my neighborhood or my world. I know that I have this fear that they want to come and take away things that are precious to me. So I lock the door, set the alarm, close the gate, and call the security service. Otherwise, I'm a very secure person. And that's just me. I'm just one guy living in the most wealthy neighborhood, in the most wealthy state, in the most wealthy country in the world. If you live in Pakistan or Afghanistan, you have a whole different image of oneness, right? This idea that we can be one is such a radical, crazy idea. That's what I think what Genesis is really telling us, okay? We can talk more about this, okay? So don't worry about dinosaurs. There are ways of understanding that, but I don't think you need to. To me, it's simply a different way of telling the story. Yes, please. Take a breath. It's okay. Everyone's so excited today.
Because the story that you're telling us about Genesis is so beautiful.
Thank you.
Almost like a fairy tale with the world being dark and then God breathes and...
I didn't tell her. I just read that. It's in the book. It's. I wish I made it.
The story starts with humans.
Yeah.
There's a big contrast because here we are talking about Judaism and questioning the world, using your the science, and paleontology and all that.
Right.
And there is no human, as you said, when the world was created.
Mm-hmm.
There was no man.
Right.
So how could we how could we believe in Genesis and the story when we know scientifically there was no man?
Okay. That's a wonderful question. And I'm not going to be able to answer it all today. I'll give you a short answer, and if you come back, we'll do this another time, because that really wasn't what I wanted to get to today. But there are different ways of answering the question. Some people will say, Genesis is a fairy tale, it's a myth, it's not true. Listen to the scientists. Some people say, science is a myth and a fairy tale, listen to Genesis. Okay? There are people on both extremes, right? Some people will say, you can read Genesis in such a way that you can squeeze the science story into it. After all, the 6 days of creation are not 6 human days, they're 6 God days, they're a billion years long, and the story of evolution takes place on the 6th day, and that's a way of squeezing the science story into the Genesis story. So far, so good? Okay. I'm going to give you a fourth way. So I said, one way, third way, here's a fourth way, right? This story was written by people before they had science. Before they had science. And they were asking, and they didn't know what we know about science. That's number one. Number two, they were answering a different question. They really weren't interested in how the world came to be. That wasn't their real question. Their real question is, what can I hope for? What can I work for? How should I be in the world? They're answering a moral question, not a scientific question. If you try to answer a scientific question with a moral text, you end up with that terrible conundrum, that terrible puzzle of where are the dinosaurs in Genesis. But I don't think that was even the question, right? Later on, you're going to get a story. My kids ask me this year. Every year the kids ask me, second graders, 8-year-olds, Rabbi, if Adam and Eve only had 2 kids, and they were both boys, and then one killed the other, how the world got full of people? And then the 5th graders who have sex education all go, ooh. Now, wait a minute. Think about that for a second, right? Adam and Eve only had 2 kids, and they're both boys. By the way, when Cain kills Abel, and Cain is made a fugitive, he says, anyone who sees me is going to kill him. But anyone is his family. I mean, who's he afraid of? And he goes and makes a city. Out of what people? It's clear that the story isn't meant to be told as a story of explanation. It knows that it can't be true like that. It's not answering that question. Sometimes we tell stories to tell what happened. And sometimes we tell stories for other purposes. Here the question is, who are you as a human being? What can you hope for? What can you work for? Who is God? What is our relationship to God? What is our relationship to good and evil? There's a whole host of what I call moral questions. How to be in the world questions. I'll be right there, Douglas. I see you. Right? There's a whole host of moral questions that are being addressed by Genesis. not the scientific question. If you want to know how the world came to be, look up paleontology on the computer, and you'll get a wonderful explanation, but this is a different one. This answers the question, how should I be in the world? And no paleontologist can tell you that. They can tell you what a brontosaurus looked like, maybe, right? But they can't tell you how to behave toward nature, how to behave toward other human beings. That's what this question is. That's what this book is trying to answer. Okay, Gelman, Workman, okay, yes.
What happened to you?
What happened to me?
I'm gone 1 week. 1 week.
What?
And you go into this digression.
I'm not ready. I'm trying to get to the point. I'm trying to get to the point.
Okay. Look.
I'm getting to the point.
So Genesis, in your interpretation,
Yes.
which I have not, I admit, had the pleasure of understanding. In your interpretation,
Until now.
Until now.
And now,
Genesis is the key to Kedusha.
watch.
Okay? The problem is, the word isn't even used there.
I know. Watch. Give me
Well,
2 more minutes. I haven't got there yet.
But you're using an example.
Wait. Just give me a minute.
Okay, just entertain this possibility.
Okay.
That you are wrong. And that precisely the notion of Kedusha is not unity, but what Malinowski called mana taboo, the notion that there is in our world a radical diremption, a radical split between the holy and us.
Yes.
And that split is contained in Kedusha.
Right.
In fact, we are not Kadosh. We can't be Kadosh until we're a corpse. The only thing that's Kadosh in the world is things, Klei Kodesh, places, Ira Kodesh, and times,
Yes.
Mikra Kodesh.
Right.
We are not holy.
Okay.
And the reason we are not holy is because we can sin. And the reason that we are in the realm of, there's a possibility that we could imitate God's holiness is because through our free will, we can do acts of goodness, kindness, compassion, and justice.
Okay, stop a second. So let me show you what I have in mind. Douglas, you want to talk now, or can I answer his question? All right. Watch. All right. Ron, do you need to throw something in? Go ahead.
The prophet said, "Let there be light."
Yeah.
It should be light to the nations.
Yeah.
And that's our purpose.
So I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay, now watch. If Genesis is the controlling narrative into which the Kedusha, the holiness code, this text is fit. Let's see if we can find it. Page 693, okay? So what Rabbi Gelman is referencing is the classical conventional attitude toward Kadosh. If you look up Kadosh in the index here, if you look it up in most encyclopedias, if you look it up under most scholars, what they're going to say is exactly as the rabbis pointed out. Kadosh refers to things divine. And things divine have to be separated from things ordinary. And Kadosh represents the separation. So Shabbat is Shabbat Kodesh because it is separate from the week. Israel is Am Kodesh. We are a holy people because we're separated from the body of humanity. The priest is a Klei Kodesh, a Kli Kodesh, because the priest is separated from the populace, right? The sanctuary is a place of Kedusha because it is separated from the ordinary districts of our ordinary life. And that's exactly true, except it's not complete because it leaves out the most important part, okay? It leaves out the real ethical, what I think the real moral lesson of Kedusha, which goes back to Genesis. The dream was a world of oneness. That's what Genesis gives us. And then human beings are put into that world. Human beings have free will. And this is the story of Genesis. The question of Genesis is, how did you get from a divine world of oneness to such a mess as this morning's newspaper? And the answer is, it's the women's fault. No, that's not right. The answer is, if you want to put a finger on 693, and let's just finish the story of Genesis, right? Look at page 17 again. Okay, here's free will, right? The two of them were naked. the man and his woman, and they felt no shame. They shared everything. There was no private life. There was no inner life of his that she didn't share, and vice versa. But in the next story, something is introduced which is really remarkable. The serpent was the shrewdest of all creatures. The irony is that the same word is arum. It's used in one sentence to mean open and one sentence to mean closed. One sentence to mean revealed and one sentence to mean concealed. The serpent was concealed. The serpent represents a part of us which we have a hard time with. It's the capacity of human beings to conceal their truth. And the serpent says to the woman, and you say, wait a minute, the woman? I thought you said they shared everything. Where's the man? But she's off on her own. Did God really say you shouldn't eat any tree of the garden? And God says, and the woman says, no, we can eat of any tree except the magic one in the middle of this garden. We can't eat it, we can't even touch it. And the serpent says, you're not going to die. Page 19, you're not going to die. But God knows as soon as you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you'll be like divine beings who know good and bad. You'll know everything. You will know. You will have knowledge. And knowledge, you'll have power. And here's the verse, verse 16. When the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, it was tasty and it was pretty. And the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom. It was powerful. She took of its fruit and she ate. Verse 6, page 19, verse 6. Sorry, I apologize. Page 19, verse 6. And she gave some to her husband and he ate. And their eyes were opened. Individuation. This is the birth of the individual. This is the birth of a self. This is a birth of a self that has desires and needs. In psychology, they talk about a child realizing that mom and me are not ultimately connected. Intimately connected, yes, but not ultimately connected. The moment that the infant discovers that the breast is not attached to him, he gets very nervous. That's the moment of great vulnerability, when I realize that I walk around the world as an individual and I'm not connected. The opposite of oneness. The opposite of oneness is individuation. And what's the ultimate? And then what happens is God shows up and says, what'd you do? Oh, by the way, they clothe themselves. Interesting phrase. Clothing is a symbol of concealment. I don't want you to see me. I don't want you to know me. I have shame. I have shame. I'm holding back something of myself. The oneness between man and woman is broken. The oneness between man and God is broken. And now what happens is God shows up and says, what the hell did you do? Did you eat of the tree? And this is the birth of man is wuss. Because the man said, I didn't. The woman you gave me, she's the one who gave me the damn fruit. And the woman says, the snake, he tempted me. Well, everyone's blaming everybody else. Right? And now God hands out these punishments. But these aren't punishments. This is the description of the human condition. We live as individuals. Right? We work for a living and scratch a living out of the planet. We give birth in terrible pain. And it's not just birthing in terrible pain, because now they have epidurals. It's watching the kid grow and then leave your house and realize that this creature your soul is bound and tied to forever, you can't control and you can't protect.
They don't leave that fast.
Yeah, but you know, there's that moment you get a call in the middle of the night and your heart's racing at 500 beats a minute, and the kid on the other hand says, don't get mad, I'm okay. Oh shit, what'd you do? You know? That's what it is, right? And then we're going to have an enmity with nature. This is the consequences of individuation. We live in a world of individuation. And we get kicked out of the garden. Which means we can't live in the world of oneness anymore if we're going to be individuals.
But we had no more.
Wait. I know. You're gonna be so happy when I'm done.
I'm happy already.
I know.
This is how I look when I'm happy.
I hate to see you when you're upset.
It's a very grotesque apparition.
No kidding. Oneness was the divine dream. Separation, atomization, individuation is the human reality. How do you bridge the two? How do you bring us back to oneness? How do you bring us back? The ultimate experience of individual, I'm going to make you sad for a second. The ultimate experience of individuation is death. Because you die alone. Everyone dies alone. It's the scariest, most alone moment in all of human existence, which is why it's the one thing we try to block out of our consciousness. Right? You go alone. You don't go with everybody. You hold hands, but you're alone. So comes this. So now the question is, how do you? And by the way, because the Jewish dream is unity, when someone dies, we say, "Tehei nishmato b'Gan Eden." Let them rest in Gan Eden. Let them go back to the world of oneness. Right? How do you bridge the two? And here's my thesis, Rabbi. Here's the thesis. Kedusha is the tool. Kedusha is the tool for returning from separation and individuation to oneness. Kedusha means oneness. It means going back to oneness. Kedoshim tihiyu. You will strive for a life of oneness. Ki kadosh ani Adonai. Because I am God. I am the one. With a capital O. I am the source of oneness. Now, you know this, by the way, because you know how you live. You know the use of that word in common Jewish parlance. Then we'll see it in the Bible. But let's take what you already know. Friday night comes, and you gather with your friends and family around a table for Shabbat, and you light candles, and you lift a glass of wine, and you say a blessing. You're not sanctifying the wine. The wine is just wine. It's Manischewitz. You're sanctifying a moment of oneness with a family and a community, and that prayer is called Kiddush. Two people who love each other turn to each other under a chuppah and pledge a life of care, responsibility, and love. A ring is put on a finger as a sign of bonding, an ultimate and intimate and eternal connection, and you say to the other, Acharei at mikudeshet li. Marriage, bonding, is Kedoshim. Person dies whom we love, and we say, I won't let go. She, he is too important to me, is still part of me, still in me, still of me. I won't let go. Death will not separate us, and so I rise in the midst of my community, and I say a prayer called Kaddish. Rabbi's right. All of these can be seen as separation. I think the other side is more interesting. They're bonding. Kiddush, Kaddish, Kiddushim have to do with bonding, making the many into one, bringing the world back to oneness. What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a step on the journey from separation to oneness. Every mitzvah makes us a little more one. That's why you say, Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav. You are making us one through the instrument of your mitzvot. Now, the opposite is also true. Watch. At the end of Shabbos tonight, you're going to make Havdalah. Havdalah is 4 brachot. Wine, spices, candle, and Hamavdil. And you're going to say, Baruch atah melech haolam, Hamavdil, God who has distinguished between Kodesh and Chol, the sacred and the not sacred, right? Shabbos and the rest of the week, the people Israel and all the other people of the world. The opposite of Kodesh is Chol. Chol means secular, plain, profane, ordinary. What's the literal meaning of the word Chol? Sand. Sand. Pick up a handful of sand at the beach. What happens? It all falls to your hands. How come? Because nothing connects the grains. Atomized, individuated, separated, it falls out of your hands. The opposite of Kodesh is Chol, is separation. Kodesh is about separation and unity. Now take a look at 693. Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai. You will live a life of Kedusha. You will strive to Kedusha. You will strive to restore the unity of Gan Eden to the world, of the Garden of Eden to the world, because I, God, am the ultimate thing, the ultimate force that unites all things into one. Now, how do you do it? Turn the page. You will revere his mother and father and keep my Shabboses. That sounds a lot like the Ten Commandments, right? In that order. Revering mother and father means the first instrument of Kedusha, of oneness, is family. And what does it say? It doesn't say you will leave your mother and father. That's what it should say. You should grow up and get the heck out of the house and become a human being. We all say that to our teenagers. But God doesn't say that. What does he say? Revere your parents. Stay connected with them. Families matter. What do I discover in family? I'm not alone in the world. I'm connected. I'm connected. Family is the ultimate and intimate and first connection of life. I mean, if you listen to the anthropologists, that's the reason why human civilization grows up. Right? It's a really interesting story. The human brain is too big. Well, for most people. The human brain is too big, which means that in order for the baby to be born through the pelvis of a woman, the baby has to be born in a very, very weak state. You ever see horses, giraffes, elephants, cows? As soon as the animal is born, it's up and walking around and playing and being like an animal. Right? Human babies can't do that for 32 years. They can't. They're completely helpless for 35 years. The baby's born, and for 35 years doesn't know what the hell to do. How do you survive? Right? How do I make a living? How do I live? How do I feed myself? How do I poop? Doesn't know nothing. No, seriously, this is the truth. The human brain is so big that in order to get that baby's head out of the pelvis of a woman, the baby has to be born in a helpless biological state. Well before, developmentally, well before where a horse is born, or an elephant is born, or a shark is born. All these other creatures are born, and the animal already is developed and knows how to be an animal. But your baby's born and doesn't know nothing. Because it has to be born that way, because if you waited another month, the baby's head would be too big to get out of the mom, and you'd kill the mom. None of this is true. Which means that babies are born helpless, which means that in order for the species to continue, there has to be some social structure to protect that infant in those first years of life until that infant can fend for themselves, which means that family is biologically determined. And if family is biologically determined, because you need that for the species, right? Then you have to create social structures that protect that baby and that family. So you create communities. It's all biologically determined by the size of your brain. Do you see how that works? So God says, pay attention to that. Families where you learn oneness. Because you learn that every man who walks the world and says, I'm a self-made man, has a mother who says, yeah, not when I was diapering you, right? Right? Revere your parents. Number 2, keep Shabbat. What is Shabbat? It's the day of coming together of families. Right? Right? Don't turn to idols or make molten gods for yourselves. I think that's a mistranslation, and I'll show you what I think it says. Al tifnu el elolim. Don't turn to gods. I'll show you why. Ve'elohem asecha, things that you made. Lo ta'asu, don't make them lachem. Now lachem can mean for yourself. I think it means of yourself. Don't worship yourself. The opposite of Kedusha is, I am a self-made man. I am the most important person in the world. Infantile egocentrism. Right? What Freud called king baby. Me, 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 me. You're supposed to grow out of that around age 2, 2.5, 32, 42. But some people never do. They spend their whole lives saying, worship me, I worship me. You all know people like this, right? You all know. Everybody knows somebody whose first response is, let me tell you what's happening to me. I'm the center of the universe. God says, that's no way to be human. Look at the next one. This is a really obscure one. You have to read it really carefully, because this is a world we don't live in. But you can figure this out. It's not hard. When you sacrifice an offering of well-being to the Lord, you're bringing a sacrifice to God to thank God for something that happened. Sacrifice it so it may be accepted on your behalf. Liratzon, do it right, says God. That's the first part of of Leviticus, right? Do it right. That's the tech manual. Remember that? It shall be eaten on the day you sacrifice it, or on the following day. But what's left of it by the third day must be consumed in fire. So you bring a sheep, And you eat it day one and you eat it day two, and it's not finished yet. Sheep is expensive. Tin foil didn't exist. So what are you tempted to do? No. What are you tempted to do?
Put it in the freezer.
Yeah, put it in the freezer. Hang on to it. Because after all, it's expensive. And you can't do that, partly because it's going to spoil. But there's a better reason why. Why can't you do that? Why can't you do that? Because if you can't finish the whole sheep yourself, you should never have brought the sacrifice by yourself. Because your good fortune that you're sacrificing, giving thanks for, was never yours alone. Your good fortune was not. I love these guys who say, I made my own fortune. Yeah, after 22 years of public education, right? You were born in a public hospital. You were educated in a public school. You drive your car on public streets. When your house is on fire, you call the public fire department. Of course you're a self-made man. No good fortune comes to one person alone. It is always a communal effort. There's no such thing as me and my good fortune. It's us and our good fortune. The idea here is that you share worship because you share the bad times and you share the good times of life. Learn that when you worship God, you come as a community. No one comes to God alone in worship. That's what that's about. Keep going with me. Come on. When you reap the harvest of your land, don't reap to the edges of your field. Gather the gleanings of the harvest. You'll not pick over the vineyard bare or gather the fallen fruits of the vineyard. You'll leave it for the poor and the stranger because I'm God. Now wait a minute. It's my farm. I used to live in Texas, so I know how to do this. Are you telling me that I can't harvest my field? Are you telling me that I can't take out what I grew? Are you telling me that this doesn't belong to me? Yeah, that's what we're telling you. Well, my God, you're a bunch of Jew commies. I knew it. A bunch of Jew liberal commies. That's it. You're coming to take my stuff. Except what? Why does it say I am God at the end of that mitzvah? Because it's not yours. This, by the way, isn't charity. This is property law. You don't reap the corners of the field because they technically don't belong to you. They belong to the poor of the community. And why is that? Because you need to learn that you are one with them too. This is all about learning oneness. You will not steal. You will not deal deceitfully with one another. You will not swear falsely, profaning the name of the Lord. I am your Lord, your God. The wonderful thing about this is every time it says I am God, it's about a mitzvah that can't be enforced in court. If you swear falsely, how do we know? We don't, but God knows. But it's more than that. If you swear falsely, it's because you have rejected the notion that I am one with the other. I swear falsely in a court of law because I'm trying to beat the other. Because I've entered into a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. If you win, I lose. Which the Torah knows is Cain and Abel. That's Cain's ethic. Beat the other because if he wins, you lose. That's hell. That's the Bible's definition of hell. If you're ever going to live in a paradise, you're going to have to learn to understand that the other is not your enemy. And you have to find some accommodation. He lives with you, she lives with you. So it says, I am God. You'll not defraud your fellow. You'll not commit robbery. The wages of a laborer shall not remain with you until morning. That's a great one. She cleans your house, she flushes your toilet, cleans your toilet, she cooks your meals, she makes your bed, she puts your kids to bed, and when she comes at the end of the day and says, por favor, el dinero por mi familia, you say, mañana, mañana, mañana. And she says, más mañana. ¿Qué es esto mañana? Yeah, tengo una familia is hungry. My family's hungry. Give me food. And you say, mañana, mañana, you're the boss. She can't sue you. You got lawyers. She doesn't even speak English. She's not even legal. Mañana, mañana. You can't do that. You can't do that because even those who are below you on the social hierarchy, you still have to consider one with you. Right? Now, it's interesting. In Exodus, this would have been because you were a slave in the land of Egypt. That's the Exodus ethic. It's an ethic of empathy. Here, it's an ethic of oneness, of principle. You see the difference? The same law appears in Exodus. And it says, because you were a slave in the land of Egypt. That's the Exodus notion of ethics. This notion of ethics is I'll be right with you, Douglas. I'm getting to something, and then I'll be done, and then you can all tell me why I'm wrong. This ethic is based on a principle of oneness. If you're ever going to have a world of oneness, you've got to look at the people who are below you on the social hierarchy and treat them with dignity. It's easy to treat the people above you as one. Who wouldn't want to suck up to the rich and the powerful? But when you treat your maid with dignity, you've learned how to do something, right? Here's an interesting one. You will not insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind. In other words, even the stuff you can get away with. You insult a deaf person, never going to hear it. You trip a blind person, or you divert somebody who doesn't know that they're being diverted. This is a category of things, right? They don't know. You'll get away with it, right? You'll get away with it. No one will ever know. There's the great Oliver Hardy, who's a great rabbi, right? Once said, no one will be the wiser. You can't do that because it's you. It's your ethic. It's not only the social impact of your crime. That's Exodus's problem. It's your own character. It's who you are as you walk the world. You are to be one. And you take responsibility for people, even if they're not in a position to say thank you, even if they never knew what you did. Even if they never knew what you did. Turn the page. Page 696. You'll not render an unfair decision. In court, they'll never know. You just render the decision, right? Do not favor the poor or show deference to the rich. You're a judge, right? Do not deal basely with countrymen. Do not profit by the blood of your fellow. I am the Lord. These are all crimes that nobody will ever find out about, but they affect you. You'll not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. That's hard for Jews because we have a lot of resentments and a lot of pain, and we tend to project our pain onto the other. Reprove your kinsman. Tell him when he did something wrong, but incur no guilt because of him. Don't take vengeance or bear a grudge against another one. And here's the important one. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You love the other as yourself. That was so important we put it on a window in the hallway. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Look at those words carefully, right? Ve'ahavta, which means love. Where else do you see the word ve'ahavta? Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. And the Torah knows you know Deuteronomy. Love. It's only three things in the world you're invited. Only three times in the Torah you're told to love somebody. You're told to love the ger, the stranger in your midst, love God, and love your neighbor, the other. Now, ve'ahavta l'reacha, third word, kamocha. Kamocha, like yourself. What does kamocha modify? Does it modify the neighbor, or does it modify love? Right? Is it you will love your neighbor as you love yourself? Is that what it is? Or is it you will love your neighbor because he is like you? Let's go one more step. You will love the neighbor because he is you. Because fundamentally the separation between you, at least morally, is an illusion. At least in my world, says God. At least in my world, right? Ani Adonai. Because in my world, says God, you and your neighbor were created at the same moment. You are Adam. You are all humanity. You are one. Don't you understand? Right? Nina and I visited Aspen, Colorado. Everyone ever been to Aspen, Colorado? Sure. Do you know that Aspen, Colorado is the home of the biggest organism in the whole world? Did you know that? Everyone thinks the blue whale is the biggest organism. It's not. You know what the biggest living organism in the world is? Yes. It's the aspen trees. You know why? They're all one tree. Miles and miles of trees. Turns out they all have a common root system. They all grow from the same system of roots. Trees that are miles apart are actually part of the same organism. Says God, that's who you are. Don't you know it? Don't you know that the other is really you? And there is no moral differentiation between you and the other. And so if you hurt the other, you hurt yourself. If you cheat the other, you cheat yourself. If you kill the other, you kill the self. That's oneness. That's the ultimate ethic of oneness. That's what God had in mind when God created the world. We violated that because we said, me, 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 and God says, okay, I get that. It'll take you a little while to develop this oneness again. So I'll give you a tool. I'll give you a set of steps, step by step by step. They're called mitzvot. And each mitzvah brings you back together into one. Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav. Until one day, you, like me, will be one. That's the meaning of Kedusha, Rabbi.
That's closer to true.
There you go. That's the nicest thing he said. That's wonderful. Douglas, you've been very patient. I apologize. Go ahead, please.
I get what you say, grounded all in communal. All these things are grounded in communal ethics and morality.
Right.
But right where you stop
Yeah.
is where the ethics and the morality stop, and you go WTF as to the next set of rules.
Yeah.
What do I care whether I wear cotton and poly or linen and wool or, you know, but what do I care whether I, you know.
First of all, sacred haberdashery. How many of you have a tailor in your family, in your background? I mean, all of us have tailors, so you should at least appreciate the fact that God has some sensitivity about tailors, okay? Okay? Okay?
What do I care if I, if I took two different kinds of stuff on a field?
Okay.
Two different kinds of.
Let me tell you what the rabbinic attitude to this, and then I can give you a modern response, okay? Here's the rabbinic attitude. Anybody here take medicine? Anybody take medicine? I take medicine. I take Lipitor. Anybody here take Lipitor? Every man over 40 takes Lipitor. Right? I would love to have the franchise on Lipitor, right? What does Lipitor do? I have no idea. I have no, and I know that it lowers my cholesterol, but first of all, I'm not really sure what cholesterol is. I know that it's bad for me. I know that it came from eating Acharei as a kid, right? And I know that it lowers Lipitor, but it lowers my cholesterol, but I have really no idea how it does it. Okay? Why do I do it? Because I trust my doctor. Because my doctor said, if you take this pill, you'll live longer. And I happen to like living. And I want to live longer, right? How many of us have had medical procedures, and we tried to understand what the hell it was, but we really didn't get it. Because we were asymptomatic. You know, that means we didn't hurt, but the doc said, oh my God, I have to remove your flibberflub. Really what he was saying was, I need a payment on my Mercedes, and I can get Medicare to pay for it. Look, we do stuff we might not understand. The rabbis understood these mitzvot this way. They said, look, these things are important, but we're not sure how they're connected. That was the rabbinic answer. No, that was the modern answer. Is if you look in certain anthropologies, you can see where some of these things come from. And then if you're sensitive to the symbolism, you can sometimes see where some of these things come from. Right? Sometimes the symbolism leads us to that. And then sometimes they're just not. And sometimes they're just ridiculous. Right? Honest to God, I didn't get my suit checked before I bought it. Right? I went to the Hollywood suit outlet, and the guy had a good price, and Nina said it looks good on you. And my cousin takes it to the Shatnez lab, and the guy does an experiment, and then he tells him it's okay or not okay. I didn't do that because this mitzvah doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but for other Jews it makes a lot of sense. Okay, they have this to them is there, but there's some of these other ones that make a lot of sense to me, and I realize that there's a deep symbolism to them, and I have to concentrate and find that symbolism. Pop, yeah, I'm gonna come. Cheryl, welcome back. Nice to have you here. Yeah.
I'm starting with the word unity.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a tension between God's desire for us to have distinctiveness and separation and God's desire for us to be connected. And so maybe it's not that the word is unity is Kedusha, but maybe it's a sense of responsibility for one another.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm using by unity.
It's a much more deeper understanding of Kedusha.
Right.
And we want to be same or we want to be
No.
unified.
No, unity doesn't mean uniformity.
Nor does it mean collective oneness.
It doesn't mean collective oneness in the sense that you can't think for yourself and do for yourself. This is the great paradox that Genesis presents to us. Right? You're supposed to be individuated.
Right.
But at the same time, you're supposed to live in a sense of responsibility for each other.
So to me, that's Kedusha. Is not to
That's fair.
But the sense of that I am responsible to David, I'm responsible to you, I'm responsible to Mark.
Right.
That living with that sense of
Right.
consciousness
Right.
is
Right. So I'm not trying to erase your individuality, because your right, your individuality is an important part of the puzzle of the world. Without you, the puzzle is incomplete. You have a piece of the world. Your perspective is unique and precious. But how do I preserve your individuality and at the same time teach a deep ethic of responsibility and mutual responsibility? That's the question of Kedusha. That's the great task. Or to put it in a different way, now that we've become individuals, can we ever get back into the garden? Can we ever get back into that place of unity and oneness and love? And peace.
No, but the garden is, I don't think it's about going back to the garden. It's about feeling the sense of responsibility to tending the garden.
I get that, but I'm going to go farther than you. I appreciate your perspective, but I want to go farther. I think getting back to the garden is exactly what this is about, which is why why you have these statements, for example, that Shabbat is a taste of paradise. Because Shabbat is a furlough into the garden. For one day you put away all of the tools of conquest and you walk around the trees of the garden. I mean, think about Shabbat as a day in the garden. It's a day of feeling one with everything. That's why Rabbi Schulweis used to say that when Rabbi Schulweis took up vegetarianism, he said, I'm a vegetarian on Shabbos because it's my day in the garden, and in the garden you don't kill stuff. So he was a Shabbos vegetarian. No, seriously, it's the exact opposite of the Jewish tradition. The Jewish tradition, you only ate meat on Shabbos because it was a luxury. Schulweis said, no, it's the opposite. Eat meat Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Shabbos, you don't kill stuff. I want to show myself once a week that I don't have to kill in order to survive in the world. I don't have to beat down my neighbor in order to survive in the world. I don't have to destroy nature in order to survive in the world. So Shabbos is what that is, right? That's how Schulweis understood it. I went a little farther than you. I think it's more than just responsibility. It's a narrative. It's a whole vision of humanity, of the world. But it's a paradox, because how do you have unity and individuality at the same time? Right? Some of us are married, and that's the question we ask every day and every night, right? Think about marriage as the paradox of unity and individuality, right? I love you. My heart is bonded with you. My soul is bonded with you, but I'm still going to watch the basketball game this afternoon, right? And if you want to watch that Heidi movie, go into the other room. You hear that? No, kidding. I mean, what, is a football game today? Heidi's a football. Well, today it's a basketball game. I know, but I want to watch the basketball game this afternoon. Yes, Douglas.
Other questions.
More questions.
Started with Genesis.
Yes.
Unity.
Yes.
Genesis, that portion ends with God regretting creating humanity.
Yes, because it's individuation gone crazy. What is individuation gone crazy? Murder. Right? When I get to the point of such competition with my neighbor that I realize that my only option is to kill him. My brother, I kill my brother. Why did he kill his brother? Because his brother had prerogatives that he didn't get. So this idea of a world of violence where we're killing each other in order to gain priority, to gain preeminence over the other, is a world God says, oh my God, this is not what I wanted. I mean, you understand? And sometimes, look, and I always read the Bible through the lens of my own experience, right? Haven't you ever opened the paper in the morning and said, what kind of world is this? Right? A kid walks into a high school with a loaded weapon and blows away 17, 19 kids. He's kind of a crazy world is this? Right? White supremacists march and that's God saying, I'm going to destroy it all. I mean, that's the divine frustration. I gave you all these blessings, and this is what you do with it? That's the divine frustration. You're putting into God's mouth, God's sensibility, our own responses to a world gone crazy. Where is the unity? Where is the wonder? And then every now and again, in the back pages of the newspaper, you'll read a story. You'll read a story, you're right? You read a story of a person who, like, completely sacrifices themselves in order to save, to protect, to help, to heal. And you say, all right, maybe tomorrow I'll let the world go on for one more day. I mean, you read, people have that capacity. They do have a capacity to heal and to help, right? They do have a capacity to heal and to help. It's just that, it's just, right, it's not quite in balance at the moment. I'm going to suggest to you that this is the heart of the Torah. This is the great task of Torah. The great task of Torah is how do we create human unity out of individuated human beings, step by step by step. Have a good Shabbos. Welcome back. So glad to see you.
I was here on Thursday morning.
Wow.
I had your site for my mom.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody couldn't, I have to tell you.
How many years has it been?
But you know what's so funny? I have never been to Minyan. I have to tell you funny.
Minyan was good.
He had a big victory this week.
I know.
Wish him